Ready.
Okay. Hi. So Grammarly is a company that helps over 40 million people, including me, become better and more effective communicators. And over the past year, I know that Grammarly has leaned into generative AI to further this goal. You've launched tools like authorship, which helps users differentiate between user-generated and human content, and prompting tools to help users better tailor what they're writing. So I'm especially excited to chat with you on what business leaders can learn about Grammarly's AI strategy. Shishir is the new CEO of Grammarly. He recently stepped into the role, and before that, he was the founder of productivity tool Coda, and he was also responsible for leading YouTube at Google and several other tech companies, including working at Microsoft. So Grammarly recently acquired Coda, a productivity tool. Can you give us context on how that happened and what's next for Grammarly?
Yeah, excited to be here. First HumanX conference, fun place to be. So we combined companies about 2 months ago now, Grammarly and Coda, and it all started with a really interesting meeting between the two leadership teams where we realized our vision for the future was an interesting mixed, almost like two puzzle pieces fitting together. We had this meeting in Vancouver, we sat down, we learned a lot about each other's strategies. First thing I learned was Grammarly's a lot bigger and different than people think. Grammarly, as Lakshmi mentioned, 40 million daily active users use Grammarly every day to help them communicate better. It's a pretty large business, over $700 million in revenue. That's often surprising to people, but the most surprising thing about Grammarly is that the actual innovation has very little to do with the grammar. The heart of what Grammarly has actually built is a technology stack to bring AI agents right to where the user works. If you think about what Grammarly does, 500,000 different applications on the web, on the desktop, so on, Grammarly can read what you're doing, annotate it, and change it for anything from Google Docs to Slack to Salesforce, so on. One of the analogies that the Grammarly founders gave me that I really liked is that it feels like Grammarly built this AI superhighway where we can bring agents right to the edge, but we're only running one car on that highway today. We're only running the one with your English grammar teacher in it. And part of what we wanted to do together was bring what Grammarly and Coda had been doing to fill those cars with the rest of the agents. One of the things Coda is very well known for is integrating with all the different products in the world. It's one of the most popular features of Coda. And that's the sort of core idea of what we're doing, is building the AI superhighway to bring agents to the edge and making it possible for anybody to deploy an agent that works right alongside humans.
Awesome. So the launch of ChatGPT is considered a seminal moment in the present AI revolution. Through your experience at YouTube, Coda, and now Grammarly, you've seen AI through many generations. Can you talk a little bit more about what this moment signified for you?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Obviously, everybody here sees the excitement the same way. I started my career working on the cloud while I was at Microsoft while that transition was happening. That was amazing. I then worked on YouTube when people thought what we were seeing was the video revolution, but actually what we were seeing was the maker revolution. That was really interesting. And I spent the last 10 years working in productivity with Coda and Grammarly. And I think what we're seeing now is a dramatic shift in productivity. I like to think of it as the third era of productivity. So maybe if you follow with me, you can think about productivity as 3 phases. First phase was digitization. That's when we took typewriters and turned them into word processors and basically went from physical tools to digital ones. And then about 15 years ago, we went through the second era of productivity where productivity became about collaboration, about working with humans. And so it went from single player to multiplayer. We saw products like Google Docs, we saw products like Slack, and all these products that really made it possible to work with your teammates in your productivity tools. And I think in this phase, we're about to take the next leap, and we're going to go from working with humans to working with humans and agents. And I think that's a really exciting way to think about it. One visual that might help is today if you open any of your productivity products, Google Docs, Coda, so on, you'll see all the avatars at the top. Right? Those are the people you work with. Imagine a future where in all those tools, instead of having the 4 or 5 teammates you work with, you have the 4 or 5,000 agents that are helping you and your team be productive. And I think that's the way I like to think about productivity is we're embracing a world where our productivity tools are going to help humans and AI work together to solve problems.
Okay, that's a great segue into my next question, which is about AI in the productivity space. How do you see Grammarly's tools evolving, and what have you already seen from users that surprised you?
What are surprises? So I think probably the most interesting surprise is there's so much AI hype, and everybody's deploying lots of different tools, but it's an amazing amount of shelfware. It's an amazing amount of people buying things that actually don't get used, don't actually produce impact. And I think one of the main reasons for that is people are forgetting the core lesson that you need to bring AI to the user instead of the other way around. So there's lots of tools being deployed that require users to change their behavior instead of working alongside them. And that's obviously a key part of what we do at Grammarly is we bring AI to the user instead of the other way around. And it has a pretty dramatic impact on productivity. I think it's a space where measuring that can be really hard. And so one of the things I was really excited about is the team came up with this idea. It's a fairly creative idea for how to measure the impact AI is having on a company. So we built a thing, we call it ROI reports. It's a very easy one for anybody to do. We ran it with a number of companies, so a lot of our customers, Smartsheet, Indeed, Databricks, so on. And the way it works is we basically run an A/B test on a company. So we take the Grammarly products and we deploy it to everybody. But for half of them, they get real suggestions, and for the other half, we sort of suppress it. And then we measure the impact on productivity based on whatever the company is trying to achieve. And the results were pretty stunning. If you bring AI to the user, you get this dramatic impact and its ability to have real impact on those users and teams. One fun stat, the average time saved for people in these studies is about 19 days per year. So if you use the Grammarly tool set and bring it right to the user, your people will get 19 days a year back in time. So I think this is really important that as we deploy AI, there's lots of hype. We need to deploy it in a way that actually works the way people work and then measure its impact on what it's doing for people.
Awesome. Now, in 2025, agents are the biggest buzzword. What does this term mean to you and Grammarly?
Yeah, so agents, I think everyone here has a different definition of agents, so I'll just share my way of thinking about it. I like to call agents virtual collaborators. So based on the third era of AI, I think of agents as the sort of virtual teammates that you can work with. And if you go one click deeper, I think of agents as having three things: knowledge, skills, and assignments. So knowledge is the set of things they know. So for example, the Grammarly agent knows every rule of the English grammar language. Skills are things they can do. So an agent might be able, like Grammarly, to annotate and edit the content you're working on. They might be able to take actions on your behalf. It can send an email. It can start an order. It can ship something to someone. And then finally, it's assignments. So my view is that you should be able to take agents and hand them assignments. The assignment might be as simple as sit next to me and help me communicate better, or as complicated as reach out to every customer and make sure they get a personalized outreach, maybe to come to an event or so on. So with that in mind, you can see an incredibly wide set of agents. And so maybe I'll give a few examples of ones that, in sort of my dreamscape of what I think people are going to see. So some agents will differentiate on knowledge. So for example, some of the more popular agents that we're building today are ones that connect with other systems. So you're going to have agents that connect to Salesforce or Jira or so on. And now when you sit down to write, you're writing your customer memo, you have your agent that is your English grammar teacher helping make sure you communicate well, but you also have the agent that says, I know what's happening with this customer because I can read Salesforce, and I can help you fill in this information. Or when you're trying to promise a feature, you can say, well, I've already read what's happening in Jira, and I can tell you the correct date that this will come out, or the correct positioning from the product marketing team. So some agents will be about changing that kind of knowledge. Another type might be agents that sort of up-level into what you might think of as coaches. Maybe as another example, every sales team has a methodology. As some sales teams run with something called MEDDIC, or lots of different methodologies. Imagine every one of those, instead of being tutorials and instructions, they became agents that work alongside you and they help your salespeople actually follow the principles of those philosophies. That might extend to things like, I'm really excited about book authors. I think every book author today produces a book that you read and then put in the back of your head. One of my favorite examples is, I love the book Radical Candor from Kim Scott. And I'm sure for everyone here who's read that, you'll read it and try to follow the guidance. But imagine that Kim didn't just give you a book. Imagine she gave you an agent that sat and watched you work and said, you are or aren't following the philosophy of the book. Maybe one last example, and this one might seem the craziest, but it was one of the most fun ones, is having a conversation with the team at Duolingo. And we're just talking about what would it mean for Duolingo to be an agent. Right now, you probably think of Duolingo as an application. Imagine instead that everywhere you worked, your Duolingo agent came with you. And it said, you want to maintain your streak. Instead of going to the app, how about you read 3 articles today in Spanish? Or maybe while you're reading in English, it can help quiz you a bit on what would this be in Spanish. Or maybe the other way around, while you're reading in Spanish, it can translate the words that you don't know, but let you figure out the ones you should know. And then when you come back to that application, when you come back to that agent, it might know what you're trying to go through and say, today's lesson, instead of focusing on how to order food at a restaurant, we're going to focus on how to buy a house, or how to buy a company, or whatever it might be. So that's how I think about agents. Is, we're going to take knowledge, skills, and assignments, and then it's up to people's dreams of what they can do with those agents. So I think there's lots of exciting things coming.
Yeah. But as a journalist who is using AI tools, one concern I have is that we're entering a world where communication is becoming increasingly automated. How is Grammarly thinking about preserving human authenticity in this environment?
Yeah, are we all going to turn into robots, or could we still stay humans? I think this is very core to how Grammarly thinks about AI. Grammarly, at sort of its heart, is a user-centric AI company. We give suggestions to people, and those people then take those actions. Right? This is help for you to communicate better. And so it's very important that the human is in the loop. It's very important that each of those suggestions matches the style of the person. We want each person to be a better version of themselves, not all be the same way, communicating with the same tone, with the same words, with the same insights. It'd be a very boring place to go and live. And I think this idea extends into a lot of our products. And one feature launch you mentioned recently was something we did called authorship. Maybe I'll explain what authorship is. There's a very surprising insight. So a large portion of the Grammarly audience is students. It's about a third of the audience. And for those users, their challenge with authenticity is sort of existential. And for a very simple reason, as students trying to prove to their professor they actually wrote the paper. And so they have this challenge of using AI in ways that are helpful, but still staying authentic to who they are. So we decided to build an agent, we called the authorship agent, that sort of reverses everything and gives a score as you're writing for how authentic it is to you versus how much AI it is. It just watches what you're doing and comes back with a score that then your professor can see that says this paper was written 80% by you and 20% by AI, or maybe it's 20% and 80%, whatever the goal might be. And we're seeing hundreds of schools adopt it and instruct students, this is how you can responsibly use AI in a way that allows you to stay authentic, but also use AI for the tools it's best for. So that's a good example, but it's very central to how we think about it. Our goal is to think of AI or AI agents as collaborators, not replacement for those humans.
Yeah. And so those that work with you know that you have a focus on rituals, and I hear that you're writing a book called The Rituals of Great Teams. As you integrate into your new role, how are you thinking about corporate culture?
Yeah, it's pretty fun topic for me. I don't know if everybody else feels the same way. I have lots of normal hobbies, but I found this interesting one in collecting rituals. And maybe I'll tell you a little story of where it came from. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, Bing Gordon. So Bing, if people don't know him, he was the chief creative officer at Electronic Arts. He's now a famous investor, Amazon, Zynga, hundreds of other companies. And he and I sat on a board together, and he was sort of harassing the CEO with this question. He said, "What are your golden rituals?" And the CEO was a little flustered and said, Bing, I don't know what you mean. And so Bing said, oh, well, every great company has a small list of golden rituals, and they all meet these 3 tests. And he had a very clear list of 3 tests. So the 3 tests are, if you think about golden rituals, the 3 tests are, they are named, number 1. Number 2, every employee knows them by their first Friday. And number 3, they're templated. The interesting way to think about rituals. And he proceeded to say, if you want to be a great company, you need to have your list of golden rituals. And he rattled off some of the examples from different companies. Amazon does 6-pagers, Google does OKRs, Salesforce does V2 Mom, and we had this whole discussion about the rituals of those companies. I got really excited about this idea. I started talking about it whenever I could, started talking with friends at other companies, and over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, I've turned it into my side project, writing this book called Rituals of Great Teams. Easy to find, ritualsofgreatteams.com. I've interviewed about 1,000 or so founders, entrepreneurs, authors, so on, to just collect up rituals from all the best companies in the world and try to categorize them into a set that people can actually use. Maybe one fun story from those interviews. I was talking to Dharmesh Shah. Dharmesh is the founder of HubSpot, and the ritual he contributed to the book is called flash tags. It's a way to communicate, to indicate severity of your opinions on topics. But his actual more interesting insight was, he said, Shishir, the reason I'm so excited about rituals, he said, I think that as companies, we misunderstand what we're building. That as companies, we're actually building 2 products. One product for our customers, that's what they all use. In his case, it's HubSpot. And we're building a whole other product for the company itself. It's the product that builds the product. And he said the thing, when people ask about that second product, they'll often describe it as culture. But if you ask people to describe culture, culture manifests as rituals. And so he said, by paying attention to rituals, what you're actually doing is putting the same amount of thought into the product for your customers as you are the product for your teams. So anyways, it's been a very interesting journey to get to learn about rituals. And of course, I'm in this unique position now of combining 2 companies, Grammarly and Coda, and we're going through this really interesting process of taking all the rituals from both companies and selectively applying them. Sometimes taking the Grammarly ritual, sometimes taking the Coda ritual, sometimes coming up with a brand new ritual. And we've done a number of them. Everything from how you make decisions, how you do planning, how you hire people. And I think that idea of build the product that builds the product is a really powerful way to think about what we do in our companies.
Amazing. And looking ahead, I'm wondering what untapped opportunities in workplace productivity is Grammarly poised to address?
I think this idea of supercharging humans with agents, I think it's a really provocative way to think about what we're going through. I think a lot of people look at AI as a threat. I look at AI the opposite way. We're about to give every person 10,000 interns. And they're great. If you think about these folks, they never disagree with each other. They'll follow your instructions. But it's also this amazing challenge. Right now, you take the average person who's maybe never been a manager before, you say, now you have 10,000 people to manage. And I think that idea of rethinking how we think about AI and productivity, it's not really about replacing anybody. It's about turning us all into scaled managers. And I think that frame it's much more exciting, but it also gives you this challenge. How are you going to take these people? How are you going to train them? How are you going to give them better instructions? How are you going to audit what they're doing and making sure it works well? But I think that's the exciting mission that we're working on now.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. I think we're right at time.